Hi, everyone. I'm Amna Nawaz in New York. Some breaking news out of Washington, D.C. today. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer has resigned in a major shakeup for President Trump's administration. And it's not even the only big change in the White House today. Let's go live now first to our Washington, D.C. bureau, where political director Rick Klein joins us live now. Rick, we saw Spicer's announcement, his decision to walk away, coming on the heels of another appointment, the announcement that Anthony Scaramucci, a former a hedge fund head, is going to be the new communications director. What do we know about how this all unfolded today?
We know that Scaramucci was an idea that was favored by the Trump family and President Trump himself. We also know that not just Sean Spicer, but also Reince Priebus were not aware of this and expressed their opposition as news of this leaked last night and into today. Our reporters were talking to folks at the White House, including Sean Spicer, who said this was not a final decision. It didn't look like it was going to be going ahead. And as it became clear this morning that President Trump was going to go ahead with this decision, that essentially demote Sean Spicer, put him under someone with no communications experience, someone who's a loyalist, part of the Trump Tower insider group, someone close to the Trump and Trump family. That became too much. That was the straw that broke the camel's back, we believe, and that is why Sean Spicer will not be at the podium again and is leaving the White House.
And we should point out that Sean Spicer has basically been doing double duty since that communications director role has been open since May when Mike Dubke resigned back then. Let's bring in Jordan Phelps, who's over at the White House for us right now. Jordan, tell us a little bit about what we're hearing from anyone at the White House about both of these moves today.
Yeah, right now, Amna, it is tight-lipped over here at the White House. It all started this morning when our chief White House correspondent, Jonathan Karl, went simply to try to talk to Sean Spicer late this morning in his office, and the door was slammed in his face. From then on, it's been closed doors back there within the communications wing of the West Wing. We are expecting to hear from the White House in a formal statement. That has not been released yet. We've yet to receive guidance today as to whether there will be a briefing today. So those are two major things we'll be looking for. Of course, the fallout from this quite major here. And as you noted, Sean Spicer has been doing double duty here for quite some time since Mike Dubke left the role of communications director. And during that time, we've seen Sean Spicer take an increasingly backseat role here from the podium. Sarah Sanders, the deputy press secretary, has been the face up at the podium, and the explanation for that has been that he is filling the role of communications director. So there's been sort of speculation and this assumption here that Sean Spicer might take on that more strategic communications role. But of course, we know that Sean Spicer was surprised by the news that Scaramucci was even interviewed by the president. Yesterday, he spent over an hour in the Oval Office, we know, with the president himself and first daughter Ivanka Trump, and he was back at the White House this morning to seal the deal.
And you're seeing their live picture inside the briefing room right now, where we expect someone may come out at some point today to take some questions. Of course, stay here for the latest. We'll have it live if and when that happens. But Rick, let's talk a little bit about Anthony Scaramucci, because this is a name that kind of came out of the blue to a lot of people. We mentioned he has a background in finance. You mentioned he has no communications experience. Why is he the right guy for this role at this time?
Because Trump's close to him, because he has been looking for a way into the White House. It actually is a name that's very well known to Trump watchers, and he's been a pretty frequent guest on cable television, which we're led to believe is went way into Donald Trump's ear and in his eyesight. And there was an episode just a few weeks ago where he was named wrongly in a CNN report. He did a combative response, and that got CNN to back down from the report. We're told privately that was something that Donald Trump was impressed by. And that seems to be what he's going for here. Look, this to me reads like a loyalty test. And the idea of moving inward here seems to be the play. Look, a lot of people will think of Sean Spicer as an ultimate loyalist. You only have to go back about a year to around the time of the Republican National Convention. There was a lot of mistrust between Sean Spicer and Reince Priebus, who were at the Republican National Committee, and Team Trump. They were not on the Trump train until very late. And that's been a sticking point constantly, that even as they have shown their loyalty out there at the podium and in doing the president's work behind closed doors in the Oval Office, they are not able to say they were there at the start. And for President Trump, that means a lot. Scaramucci is someone who is close to him, a self-made man, worth some $100 million, we believe, when he sold his business interests. So that is another level of how Trump understands him. And Scaramucci, we believe, pitched himself for the job, or was approached for the job, and it seems to be a much different direction. It may be that President Trump wants someone who has no experience in this realm because he feels that he has been ill-served by his communication staff.
And Jordan, tell me a little bit about that decision-making behind the Scaramucci appointment, because this is something that also seems a little unbelievable to some degree. There are reports that Reince Priebus, the chief of staff, didn't even know that those conversations were going on or that his appointment was imminent. Is that true?
Yeah, Amna, there is reporting to that degree that Reince Priebus didn't know, and senior officials have indicated as much. But the bigger point here is that what this means for Reince Priebus, if he was left out of the loop or left out of the loop until the very end, perhaps he was notified just before, we're not sure of the exact timeline, it indicates that his leadership may be weakening here at the White House, with the president himself taking the lead on this move, bringing Scaramucci in to interview for this position. So it does seem to spell trouble for Reince Priebus as well. We know, of course, that Sean Spicer is a loyalist to Reince Priebus, came over with him from the RNC. So there does seem to be a weakening with the departure of Sean Spicer in the Priebus orbit.
And Rick Klein, we have talked about this before. You mentioned it a little bit earlier. There is this bit of a divide in the administration between the loyalists and those who really joined the team after the RNC. Do we expect there could be more changes? What does this mean for the way business gets done moving forward in the White House?
I'd be surprised if this is the end. And I think the fact that Reince Priebus was cut out of the loop, as Jordan was talking about, that's pretty telling. It's hard for me to imagine, frankly, Reince Priebus continuing under that situation. In addition to that, we already know that another former RNC staffer who was at the White House left, is now coming back. Katie Walsh, actually a Reince Priebus deputy, so maybe they're shoring up some reinforcements for now. They're obviously going to have to name a new press secretary in addition to this communications role. We also know that the president is in the midst of shaking up his legal team and reordering some responsibilities. We saw another resignation last night, a little bit lower profile, a spokesperson for the president's legal team, the outside counsel. We have new names coming in and circling in. But I'd return, Amna, to the point that I've been talking to a number of Republicans about in recent days, which is you can replace a legal team, you can replace a communications team. They're not replacing the man in the middle. And it's not a failure of communications or a failure of good legal advice that seems to be serving the president poorly right now. It's his own actions, it's his own words, it's his own outbursts, and in this case, his own hiring decision that led to a staff reorder that he didn't fully anticipate today.
Well, Rick, tell me a little bit more about this, and Jordan, feel free to jump in on the back end here, but you guys, we've all talked about this before. That job right there, whoever takes that podium, that is one of the toughest jobs in D.C. right now, having to answer for and somehow explain a lot of the things that the president will say or tweet on the fly, a lot of which don't end up being true or panning out in the long run. So, Rick, what changes with Scaramucci as the head of communications, with Spicer gone? What changes about messaging from the White House?
Well, one thing I would expect is that we'll see a more aggressive cable television surrogate operation, a pushback operation around that. That would seem to be the Scaramucci way, and I know that the Trump way is to fire back as much as possible. Maybe less from the podium. That's speculation on my point. On my part, we've already seen the podium fade in terms of its import, fewer on-camera briefings by far than previous White Houses have had. But I agree with it. Look, it's a hard job on two levels. One is you're explaining the inexplicable because of how this White House operates. The second is you're performing for an audience of one very important person who is watching or listening, paying very close tabs to how he's communicated about on television, and that is the President of the United States. I can't imagine doing my job if I had my boss over my shoulder all day, and if your boss is the President of the United States, it makes it even harder, and you're dissected and analyzed. You become a character on Saturday Night Live. This is the highest profile White House press secretary we've ever had for a variety of reasons in Sean Spicer, and he leaves just around the 6-month mark. It's a big void that's going to be filled by someone who's going to have a very difficult task ahead of him or her.
Jordan, sorry, go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah, to add to your point, Rick, one thing about this shakeup is it may speak less to what Scaramucci offers, and indeed, as you noted, Rick, he did effectively squash that CNN story, but it also speaks to what Sean Spicer has failed to do. We've known that for a long time the president has been unhappy with his performance at the podium. One of the speculated reasons why there have been fewer on-camera briefings, with his performances in front of the camera becoming the mockery of Saturday Night Live. So this is as much a reflection on the job that Sean Spicer has not done, and perhaps, as it is on the job that Scaramucci can do.
So, Rick, take it big picture here for us now. We're 6 months in to Mr. Trump's presidency. This is a big staffing shift. Is this normal in the course of operations? Is it indicative of the way that Mr. Trump and his team do business? Could we see more big changes down the line?
It is not normal. And it's not just the staffing shift, because staffing shifts happen. The White Houses make changes in terms of how they communicate. The Clinton administration famously swapped out a whole bunch of people at the podium in the first 6 or 9 months until they settled into a rhythm. And the White House chiefs of staff come and go, cabinet secretaries come and go. Those things are normal. The volume may be a little bit more, and certainly it's louder, that kind of volume as well. But the rest of this, what they are responding to, this gush, this torrent of information coming out at multiple fronts, so much of it generated, these headlines generated by the president himself, that has been his manner of doing business since he has been in public life for 40 plus years. A lot of people thought it would change because the White House would enforce certain strictures on him, and it has not. And this is the Trump way, just as the President of the United States inside the White House.
Rick, do you think we actually see a briefing today? They take questions?
They're saying yes. I would be surprised just from a communication standpoint. They haven't announced one yet, but the word we've gotten, the guidance we've gotten is that yes, at some point they'll be taking questions at the podium today.
And of course, you guys, your team will be covering that live right here. So you guys can tune into the briefing room when and if we should say that White House press briefing does happen later today. Stay here for the latest live events then. Jordan Phelps at the White House, Rick Klein in Washington, D.C. Thanks for being here, guys. Thanks to all of you for watching as well. Remember, you can go to abcnews.com anytime for continuing coverage of the breaking news out of Washington. That's the resignation of Sean Spicer as the White House press secretary and the appointment of a new communications director. Stay here for the latest and for the briefing room coming up later today. For now, I'm Amna Nawaz, and I'll see you back here soon.